Imagine walking across a vast, completely empty salt flat under a cloudless sky. In every direction, the earth stretches out until it meets a razor-sharp line where the ground terminates and the heavens begin. To your eyes, this line, the horizon, presents itself as a massive, objective physical boundary, a distant wall marking the edge of the visible world. If you choose to run toward it, your body prepares for a journey of approach. Yet, no matter how fast you run, how far you travel, or what mechanical speed you employ, that distant boundary remains precisely, mockingly the same distance away. It is an unyielding phantom. The reason is not a trick of the landscape, but a law of your own biology. The horizon is not a physical place at all, but a mathematical limit mapped directly to the curvature of the earth and the exact height of your pupils. If you stand on a flat plane, your horizon is a perfect, unbroken circle with a radius of roughly 3 miles, and you are positioned at its absolute, mathematical dead center. Every step you take forward reconstructs this entire hemisphere of spatial reality, sliding the boundaries of the cosmos along with you. If another person stands directly beside you, they do not share your horizon. They occupy an entirely distinct, overlapping geometric bubble. You are not a tiny, insignificant traveler navigating a pre-existing world. You are the geometric origin point of your own private universe, a living center around which the entire landscape continuously bends, shapes, and arranges itself. We spend our lives operating under the deep, unexamined assumption that we inhabit a massive, public stage. We believe that the cities we build, the highways we pave, and the mountains we climb exist in a static, objective neutral space that looks exactly the same, regardless of who is looking at it. This collective agreement is the psychological cement that holds our society together. It allows us to coordinate our actions, share our maps, and pretend that we are all looking at the exact same world. But when we strip away our social conditioning and look closely at the raw physics of perception, this shared stage is revealed to be a magnificent illusion. The brain does not receive a direct, unmediated feed of an objective external reality. Instead, your sensory hardware is an active projection engine. It takes a chaotic, formless bath of electromagnetic radiation and atmospheric vibrations and organizes them into a highly structured, egocentric coordinate system, where you are always the coordinate origin, the absolute point of zero. This means that the spatial architecture of your daily life is fundamentally non-shareable. When you look at a towering skyscraper, the light rays bouncing off its steel frame must travel through the air, pass through your individual lenses, and strike your unique retinas before the brain can render the image of the building. The skyscraper you perceive is a highly customized, internal simulation generated inside the dark chamber of your skull. The person standing 10 feet away from you is receiving a completely different set of light angles, processing them through a different neural filter, and projecting a slightly different skyscraper into their own conscious space. The physical universe does not present itself to us as a singular, open plaza. It is an infinite collection of private, nested bubbles, each centered on an individual observer. We are like actors performing on the same stage, yet each of us is locked inside a personal holographic theater that renders a custom set for our eyes alone. This geometric isolation introduces a profound psychological conflict into our everyday human striving. We behave as though the goals we chase, the milestones of career, the acquisition of wealth, or the search for emotional security, exist as concrete destinations out on the distant horizon of our lives. We believe that if we can just travel far enough, work hard enough, or run fast enough, we will finally arrive at the boundary of our desires and find a permanent place of rest. But because the horizon of your life is a mathematical reflection of your current internal state, it is structurally impossible to ever catch up to it. The moment you achieve a long-sought goal, your coordinate origin shifts, and the horizon of your expectations instantly leaps another 3 miles into the distance. The tragedy of the human ego is that it spends its entire existence sprinting toward a moving boundary, entirely blind to the fact that the line it is chasing is being projected by its own face. To understand how deep this projection loop goes, we must examine the hidden evolutionary utility of this egocentric geometry. The brain did not evolve to perceive the absolute objective truth of the cosmos. It evolved to ensure the survival of the biological organism. If your mind attempted to process the universe in its true, non-localized state as a vast, undifferentiated sea of quantum probabilities and infinite dimensions, you would be completely paralyzed by the sensory overload. You would have no way to distinguish between what is near and what is far, what is a threat and what is a resource. To solve this, the brain developed the ultimate survival software, perspective. By organizing the chaos of reality into a tidy, sequential hemisphere of depth, centered entirely on your physical body, the brain creates a highly practical navigation simulator. The illusion of distance, background, and horizon is a protective partition, a biological firewall designed to keep the infinite magnitude of the universe from crushing your fragile, localized identity. This realization triggers a radical reevaluation of what we call our personal problems and environmental challenges. We are taught to view our obstacles as heavy, external structures that have been dropped onto our path by a cold, indifferent destiny. We complain about the toxicity of our workplaces, the emotional distance of our partners, or the chaotic state of our societies, treating them as objective landscapes we must endure. But in a universe where the horizon moves with you, these external conflicts lose their status as independent entities. The hostile environment you find yourself in is not a separate, static room. It is a precise geometric reflection of your own internal coordinate system. The friction you encounter at the boundaries of your life is the physical rendering of your own unexamined blockages, taking shape in the malleable clay of your personal space. You cannot escape a difficult landscape by simply changing your geographic location, because the geometry of your mind will simply reconstruct the exact same horizon the moment you arrive at your new destination. Yet, as we anchor ourselves in this geometric perspective and begin to see through the illusion of a public world, we are confronted with a deep, reality-bending question. If the entire physical landscape is a personalized projection centered on our individual awareness, and the horizon of our lives is a boundary we can never physically cross, what is the nature of the reality that exists beyond the limits of our personal bubble? If the world we see is a customized theater designed for an audience of one, how do we ever truly connect with another human being? And what happens to the entire geometric architecture when the observer at the center finally decides to stop running? To unpack this geometric isolation, we must enter the fascinating frontier of cognitive psychology and modern spatial neurology. The brain does not navigate the world using a single static map. Instead, it constantly switches between two fundamentally different modes of spatial representation, the allocentric and the egocentric. An allocentric map is a mental model of the world that is independent of your current location. It is the layout of your city as viewed from a satellite, where north remains north regardless of which way you are facing. An egocentric map, however, is a highly fluid, real-time calculation centered entirely on your physical body. It measures the distance of every object, the coffee cup on your desk, the doorway across the room, the car approaching from the side, relative to your hands, your eyes, and your chest. This neural system means that your brain is constantly running an active, real-time coordinate translation engine. The raw data of the universe is fed into your sensory organs, and the brain immediately translates it into a personalized theater of action. When you reach for an object, your brain does not think in absolute GPS coordinates. It calculates a vector of movement beginning at your shoulder and ending at your fingertips. If we look at this processing through the lens of evolutionary biology, a striking truth becomes clear. Your subjective experience of space is entirely utilitarian. The distance of the horizon is not an astronomical measurement. It is the boundary of your current arena of action. Your brain renders the world as a series of nested horizons of accessibility, defining your reality not by what is out there, but by what you can do with it. This biological framework introduces a profound concept known as peripersonal space, the invisible psychological bubble that surrounds your body, extending roughly as far as your limbs can reach. Neurological studies have shown that when you hold a tool, such as a hammer or a long stick, your brain's spatial map instantly adapts. It expands your peripersonal space to include the length of the tool, treating the tip of the instrument as an extension of your own physical fingers. This reveals a highly plastic, incredibly responsive architectural system. Your personal reality is not a rigid cage, but a dynamic, breathing field of influence that expands and contracts based on your focus, your tools, and your intent. The horizon of what you consider to be yourself is highly malleable, shifting outward to encompass whatever you choose to engage with. When we map this neurological plasticity onto our psychological lives, the structural relationship between our internal state and our external horizon becomes even more pronounced. In psychology, the boundary of your personal reality is determined by your current level of consciousness and emotional maturity. If you exist in a state of chronic fear or survival, your neurological firewall constricts, your peripersonal space shrinks, your focus narrows, and the horizon of your life pulls in incredibly close, rendering every external event as an immediate, threatening confrontation. Conversely, when you shift into a state of trust, curiosity, or deep presence, your cognitive field dilates. Your horizon expands, revealing opportunities, connections, and long-term possibilities that were previously invisible to your narrow survival focus. This conceptual shift completely transforms our understanding of human struggle and stagnation. When we feel stuck in a repeating pattern of failure or relationship conflict, we often attempt to solve the problem by manipulating the external landscape, changing partners, switching jobs, or moving to a different city. But in the mathematics of the moving horizon, this is a profound structural error. You are attempting to alter the shape of the reflection without changing the geometry of the projector. The recurring obstacles in your life are not static. Independent hurdles placed in your path by a hostile world. They are the physical boundaries of your current internal limits, taking shape at the exact edge of your personal horizon until you alter your core coordinate system. The unexamined beliefs and emotional blockages at your center. The horizon will simply rebuild the same landscape of limitation wherever you go. Yet, as we begin to see through the illusion of a static external stage and accept the moving geometry of our personal bubbles, a deeper, more symbolic layer of the mystery presents itself. If our physical world is an egocentric projection designed to keep us navigating a personalized landscape, what are the ancient hidden patterns that govern this design? If we are all walking within our own private circles of reality, how do these individual spheres of space-time intersect? And what is the deeper architectural blueprint that coordinates the grand, overlapping dance of our separate horizons? To decode the grand, overlapping blueprint of our separate horizons, we must turn to the ancient, sacred geometries and symbolic architectures that mapped this personal containment long before the advent of modern neurological science. Across cultures, the most fundamental symbol of this spatial containment is the circle with a point at its center, the monad. In Hermetic and alchemical traditions, this glyph was not merely a representation of the sun or physical gold, but a structural diagram of individual consciousness. The point at the center represents the silent, unmoving observer, the I am at the core of your being. The outer boundary represents your horizon, the absolute limit of your current perception and influence. The alchemists understood a profound cosmic law. The outer circle can only exist because of the pressure of the point at the center. The world you see is not pressing in on you. Your consciousness is pushing out, holding the horizon at bay to create a temporary, protected clearing in the infinite void where your individual soul can experience the drama of existence. This hermetic geometry aligns perfectly with the hidden architectural design of ancient temples and sacred spaces. Whether examining the stupas of India, the pantheons of Rome, or the stone circles of Northern Europe, the layout remains remarkably consistent, a highly structured, concentric mandala designed to represent the cosmos. When an initiate entered these temples, they did not walk into a random, public room. They stepped directly into a physical model of their own psychological space. The temple was designed to orient the viewer, placing them at the absolute center axis of the world, the axis mundi. By standing at this central cross-section of space and time, the traveler's personal horizon was symbolically aligned with the cosmic horizon. The ancient builders knew that human suffering is born from the disorientation of the ego, which forgets its status as the center of the wheel and begins to feel like a helpless, drifting leaf blown across a chaotic, uncentered landscape. When we look at this spatial architecture through the cross-cultural archetype of the horizon chaser, the psychological conflict reaches its absolute zenith. In world mythology, we repeatedly encounter the tragic figure of the wanderer who is cursed to travel to the ends of the earth in search of a mythical kingdom, a fountain of youth, or a lost paradise. These myths are profound psychological allegories for the human condition. The wanderer's curse is not that the destination does not exist. It is that they are looking for an internal state of wholeness in the external landscape. Because they are seeking a physical coordinate on a map, they are structurally doomed to failure. The horizon of their search will eternally recede before them, matching them step for step, leaving them forever exhausted and homesick on a road that has no end. The turning point of the myth occurs only when the traveler stops running, turns their gaze inward, and realizes that the paradise they were chasing at the edge of the world was the very center from which they started. This dynamic sheds a stunning new light on the phenomenon of projection and the hidden architecture of human relationships. If we are all walking within our own private circles of reality, then our interactions with other people are not collisions between separate, physical objects in a neutral space. Instead, our relationships are the intersection points of overlapping holographic spheres. When you meet another person, you are not seeing them in their absolute, raw reality. You are viewing a customized version of them that has been rendered within your personal horizon, filtered through your current emotional expectations, fears, and unresolved shadows. The other person is a mirror, taking shape at the boundary of your circle to show you the precise nature of the geometry you are projecting from your center. If you carry a hidden, unhealed wound of betrayal, the horizon of your reality will continuously populate your circle with characters who betray you, not because the world is inherently untrustworthy, but because your coordinate engine is actively drawing that specific boundary to force your own awakening. When you break through the illusion of the external other in this manner, the entire architecture of human conflict undergoes a spectacular, liberating mutation. You realize that you can never truly fight, change, or manage the people on the screen of your life, because they are the living reflections of your own internal axis. The war you are waging with the world is an internal war you are waging with your own unintegrated parts, staged beautifully, on the 3-mile canvas of your personal horizon. The moment you cultivate deep, unconditional self-compassion and resolve the friction at your center, the geometry of your projection shifts. The old enemies at the edge of your circle must either transform their behavior or fade out of your horizon entirely, because the coordinate engine no longer requires their presence to illuminate your shadow. Yet, as we master this symbolic translation and recognize the alchemical laws that lock us into our personalized bubbles of space, we are brought face to face with the practical daily landscape of our waking lives. If our entire physical environment is a personalized projection centered on our individual awareness, how does this realization affect the way we handle the heavy, exhausting trials of our careers, our personal finances, and our daily social interactions? How do we translate the vast, metaphysical geometry of the moving horizon into a practical tool for absolute psychological freedom in the next 5 minutes? To translate this metaphysical geometry into a practical tool for daily liberation, we must apply its mathematics to the very structures that drain our modern energy, our careers, our personal finances, and our crushing schedules. The most exhausting illusion of the modern matrix is the concept of the arrival point. We are conditioned by the social clock to believe that our lives are linear escalations toward a static, golden plateau. We tell ourselves that once we cross the horizon of a specific salary bracket, secure a particular job title, or pay off a certain debt, we will finally enter a permanent zone of safety and rest. But because your psychological horizon is a moving boundary mapped to your current level of internal lack, it structurally recalibrates the moment you step forward. If you chase financial abundance from a core coordinate of scarcity, your horizon will simply upgrade your desires and expenses to match your new income, keeping you exactly the same distance from fulfillment. This structural realization delivers an immediate, grounding remedy for the trap of lifestyle creep and corporate burnout. The moment you recognize that the horizon of enough is an illusory mirage projected by an unexamined ego, you are liberated from the frantic compulsion to sprint. You stop treating your current daily life as a disposable stepping stone to a mythical future destination. Instead of waiting for a distant financial milestone to grant you permission to breathe, you anchor your coordinate origin in the absolute fullness of the present moment. You realize that true wealth is not an accumulation of assets out on the edge of your circle, but the capacity to occupy the absolute center of your own life with unshakable presence. This internal shift immediately alters the geometry of your career. You stop working as a frantic survivor, trying to escape a hostile landscape, and begin operating as an intentional creator who projects excellence from an aligned center. This geometric perspective completely revolutionizes how we manage our daily time and the manufactured panics of the digital grid. When you open your phone and submerge your consciousness in notifications, emails, and social media feeds, you are effectively allowing the chaotic, uncentered projections of millions of strangers to hijack your coordinate engine. Your personal peripersonal space is instantly flooded with global crises, artificial deadlines, and superficial comparison traps, compressing your cognitive field into a reactive state of survival. To reclaim your reality, you must practice aggressive boundary architecture. You must recognize that your attention is the primary power source that fuels the rendering of your world. By consciously disconnecting from the digital noise and anchoring your awareness in the immediate physical room around you, you re-establish your rightful position at the absolute zero point of your own sovereign universe. When you master this grounding practice, your approach to difficult people and high-stress environments undergoes a massive practical upgrade. The next time you find yourself sitting in a high-stakes corporate meeting or dealing with a volatile family member, do not allow your nervous system to launch into a frantic defense against an external threat. Instead, silently remind yourself, this entire scene is taking place inside the dark theater of my own skull. The aggressive boss, or the critical partner, is a character taking shape at the exact boundary of your personal horizon to reveal an unexamined friction within your own psychology. Instead of trying to fix, change, or argue with the projection on the screen, you gently drop your attention down into your physical body, soothe the internal trigger at your center, and alter your own emotional posture. The moment you shift your internal coordinate from reactivity to calm neutrality, the external dynamic is structurally forced to rearrange itself around your new center. Yet, as we integrate this geometry into our daily survival and learn to hold our position at the center of our personal bubbles, the ultimate realization of this intellectual expedition begins to take form. If the horizon of our physical world is an unyielding phantom that we can never catch, and if every external obstacle is a customized reflection of our internal limits, what happens when we finally cease the exhausting sprint altogether? What is the final reality-shifting twist that occurs when the observer at the center of the circle stops trying to navigate the boundaries of the simulation and instead turns around to face the ultimate origin point of the entire architecture? When you finally cease the exhausting sprint toward the mirage of the moving horizon, the entire spatial architecture of your life collapses into a state of absolute, luminous stillness. The ultimate, reality-shifting twist of the human experiment is not that you will eventually reach a distant boundary of perfect safety and fulfillment. It is the realization that there has never been a there to get to. The boundary wall between where you are and where you want to be is exposed as a masterpiece of biological staging. For your entire life, the mechanical pacing of the ego has convinced you that you were a fragile, displaced traveler, crossing a massive, indifferent continent. But as you step into the absolute clarity of the centered mind, the grandest cosmic joke of the physical simulation is laid bare. The world you thought you were running through was actually a beautiful, continuous projection emerging from your own face. The horizon was never a barrier keeping you out. It was a mirror showing you the exact shape of your own light. This understanding delivers a profound, liberating resolution to our expedition. True freedom is not found by conquering the landscape, but by recognizing your status as its source. When you no longer disown the scenes at the edge of your circle, or chase the receding lines of tomorrow, the matrix of chronology can no longer force you into the reactive loops of anxiety, lack, and perpetual striving. The frantic urgency collapses. The haunting weight of missed opportunities and wrong turns fades. The old existential war with aging ceases, but instead of darkness or passivity, you are met with an immense, unshakable peace. You do not cease to engage with the world. You simply expand into it. You wake up from the heavy, exhausting dream of being a tiny, insignificant speck wandering a vast, hostile earth, and you return to the vast, unified reality of an immortal creator who recognizes that every coordinate of their journey is an eternally preserved, living masterpiece. This realization permanently transforms the posture with which you occupy the remaining scenes of your physical life. You no longer walk through the world as a frantic survivor, desperately trying to reach the next milestone or fix the reflection on the screen. You move with the effortless grace of an unshakable observer who knows that every delay, every corporate hurdle, every difficult relationship, and every unexpected shift is a deliberate geometric prompt designed to bring you back to your center. The frantic demands of the social clock, the manufactured panics of the digital grid, and the artificial deadlines of validation lose their gravity. You can look directly into the eyes of your deepest losses, your unmapped futures, and the broader chaos of human history with a quiet, unyielding compass. You know, with absolute certainty, that you cannot truly lose your way on a path that is drawn from the very coordinate of your own soul. As you step away from this documentary and return to the immediate reality of the room around you, the dense architecture of the waking matrix will instantly attempt to reclaim your focus. The world will demand your worry, your schedule will demand your panic, and your mind will try to pull the familiar override switches of linear projection, urging you to start running toward the horizon once again. But the threshold has been crossed. The next time you feel the phantom pull of a future milestone, or sit across from a mountain of daily stress, do not rush to sprint or launch into a frantic defense. Sit perfectly still in the quiet space of your own awareness. Feel the immense weight of the eternal now, making impact within your biology, and look past the surface of the moving scene. If the illusion of the distant, unreached paradise has kept you running for a lifetime, imagine the reality that is waiting when you finally have the courage to stop, stand still, and recognize that you are already home.